Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. And I want to welcome to the program at this time. We have a special guest on the phone. We have Dr. Merrill Matthews from the Institute for Policy Innovation. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the energy industry can help out with the infrastructure problems that we're always hearing that we have in this country. Dr. Matthews, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's absolutely a pleasure. And when I saw your specialty and what you wanted to talk about, I thought this would be a perfect match for this part of Wyoming, especially with the energy industry is pretty much our bread and butter up here, and it would be interesting to hear how the energy industry can help with this infrastructure improvement. But before we get started, why don't we talk a little bit about your background and your qualifications first, so everybody kind of knows who we're talking to.
Okay. Well, I am from the Institute for Policy Innovation, as you mentioned. It's a 39-year-old organization, a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in the Dallas area, and we're just we're a research institute, and typically called a think tank, and we work on a range of different policy issues that have to do with energy, health. I specialize in healthcare and economic issues. We work on intellectual property issues, tax policy, just a range of public policy issues.
Okay, and your personal background, you've done quite a lot of work in a lot of different fields. I mean, you've done work in the health field and the energy field. I mean, you've had quite a varied experience.
Right. I have a PhD in humanities from the University of Texas at Dallas. I worked. I was teaching philosophy for a while. Started in the public policy world a little over 20 years ago, working on health policy and specializing in medical ethics. And eventually started working on all the policy areas, and have been doing that for a number of years. So, it's kind of an academic background, and I've enjoyed doing that.
Well, I imagine an academic background would be it would be helpful when you're trying to come up with some of these concepts. Sometimes are abstract, and you have to think outside the box rather than just normal. Normally, when you hear about someone that wants to improve infrastructure, they just, we'll just budget some money and we'll build some bridges, and that's all they really think about it. But thinking outside the box can be really helpful, can't it?
It can, and of course the president has. Last week, Vice President Joe Biden was doing a week-long tour of the country to promote infrastructure spending. I think they called it Infrastructure Week, and talking about how we need to put more money into the infrastructure. And of course, we spent $100 billion in the stimulus package, and then the president has promoted more infrastructure spending every time he proposes a budget. However, the private sector spends money on the infrastructure as well, and especially in the energy industry. You've got companies that are wanting to build pipelines to take the oil and natural gas that are out there that we're finding in places we never found it before and get it to the refineries. And the pipelines are the most efficient way of transporting that oil and natural gas to be refined. And the president, of course, most of your listeners, I suspect, will be familiar with the Keystone XL pipeline. That's the one where TransCanada wants to build a pipeline in the U.S. To bring Canadian oil from Alberta, Canada, down into the Gulf Coast of Texas. And the president has simply stalled that. But there are other companies in the U.S. that want to build more pipelines from one part of the U.S. to the other part of the U.S., and they're having trouble getting their licenses approved and so forth in prompt manners. It just seems to be that this administration is pushing back on that. The pipelines are infrastructure. They pay good jobs, and We need that because the energy industry right now is having, the oil and gas industry, they're having to rely on the rails to get their product to the refineries, and that's not the most efficient. It's more expensive, and it has created certain problems itself.
Well, and all you have to do is just go back and look last week. Now, it wasn't a freight train hauling oil, but it does happen. I mean, trains do derail from time to time, and that's just part of the railroad industry. I mean, as tragic as it is, it happens. Accidents happen, and anything you can do to get that safety to the transmission of the oil and the natural gas is definitely worth it.
Well, we went from using the railroad industry supplied 9,500 cars in 2008 in order to move oil and gas. That went up to 400,000 carloads of crude oil just a couple of years ago. So that's the expansion of carloads of trains that we're using just to transport some of this crude oil that's coming from in some places from Canada and other places from all around the country to try to get it to the refineries. And that has created its own problem. So we're glad the railroads are there. They oftentimes are close by where they're drilling the oil. But it also creates backups for agriculture and other industries that need to use the railroads, and it has put a lot of extra wear and tear on the railroads. So getting the pipelines up and built with private sector money. The president seems to think that that infrastructure spending is only good if it's government spending, but here you've got infrastructure being proposed by private sector companies. It doesn't cost a taxpayer a dime. In fact, taxpayers make money off of it because it creates jobs and people pay taxes with that money.
Well, absolutely, and not to mention, once those people move into these towns where the pipeline is going to be going through, I mean that has the whole trickle down effect that we've seen, over and over again throughout the years. It helps the service industry, it helps the housing industry. You have entire towns that pop up. I mean, Gillette here in Wyoming is a good example of a town that popped up because of coal mining, and it's a lovely city. It's growing like crazy, and I really never quite understood the opposition. I know on the face the opposition is for environmental reasons, but it seems like there's something a bit more to it.
I think there is something a bit more to it, and just to point out that on the Keystone XL, the president has pushed back on that for environmental reasons. But here's what most people don't know about that, Don, is that the Keystone XL pipeline that has been in the news so much, that's only the fourth phase in a four-phase project. The Keystone pipeline system that starts in the same place in Alberta, goes across 3 Canadian provinces, drops down through North Dakota, South Dakota, into Nebraska, and then travels over into Illinois for refining. That pipeline has been up and running for 5 years, carrying the exact same oil that the president is so concerned about. That has been operating efficiently for 5 years. Phase 2 of the Keystone XL connected to the pipeline in Nebraska and went down to Cushing, Oklahoma. Cushing, Oklahoma is a major oil and gas storage hub. Phase 3 started 3 years ago from Cushing, Oklahoma, and is bringing oil and gas down to the Texas refineries. And the president even showed up in Cushing when they started that 3 years ago, as March of 2012, and commented on what a great project this was going to be. Those are all part of the Keystone pipeline system. The Keystone XL was just going to start in the same place in Alberta, and instead of going down through North Dakota, it dropped through Montana and went over to Nebraska and would connect up there at the same place where it's already connecting. So it was just going to be an extra pipeline to bring more of the Canadian oil, not the first time, but more of it. And yet the environmentalists seem to act like this is the first time this is happening, that we would be bringing this heavy crude oil from Canada. We've been doing it for 5 years.
Oh yeah, well, and not to mention that spur through Montana. There's also a place where about 100,000 barrels a day of Montana oil would be going into that pipeline. So
that's absolutely right. It was supposed to open up so that they could ship 100,000 barrels a day of the Bakken shale down to Nebraska, and then it could either go straight down to Texas, or it could go over to those Illinois refineries. So, yeah, it was supposed to help U.S. oil as well, but the president has stopped this so far, and it probably won't happen unless you have a new president in office.
So, I think you're probably right on the and it has to be the right president, because I don't want to say any names, but I have a feeling that unless the president is the right president, we might still be seeing these delays. And
I think that's right.
And I can tell you, I mean, the part of Montana that would be affected by the XL addition to the pipeline is only a couple hours from here. It's not far, and that area right now isn't exactly flourishing. I mean, they've been waiting for this for years, and it just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. And once this pipeline could start getting that oil, out of the Montana area, it would be a huge boon for them.
Yeah, it would help them in Montana. And, of course, the president's criticism of the Keystone XL is that these are creating that would just be temporary jobs, not full-time jobs. And that's true in part. The people, once you build the pipeline, then the pipeline's done and those workers go someplace else. But all infrastructure jobs are temporary for the most part. And yet the president keeps pushing building infrastructure jobs out there, but they're almost all temporary. Once the bridge is built, the construction workers go someplace else. Once the road is built, they go someplace else. And so, yes, the Keystone XL would be there would be some permanent jobs, but most of them would be temporary building the pipeline, because once it's built, they go on and build something else. But on the other hand, those are high-paid, mostly union jobs, and those unions have been pressuring the president to try to approve that, and he simply hasn't done it.
Well, and not to mention the revenue that this brings in could lead to further infrastructure building of bridges and roads and that kind of thing. But again, it seems like this administration, at least, has been just frozen in place by environmentalists. And I don't know if you saw yesterday in the news where the president himself is blaming climate change for ISIS in Syria and Boko Haram in Africa. I'm not quite sure how you make that connection, but that seems to be the implication. If we keep building these pipelines, we're just going to have terrorists popping up out of the ground.
Well, climate change has become the default factor on seems like everything. So if weather is dry in California, that's from climate change. If the weather is really wet in Texas, which it has been this year, that's because of climate change. Everything seems to be the cause of, and of course the Northeast this year had its coldest winter in history. And with its most snowpack there in Boston and some other places, and apparently that's because of climate change.
It does seem to be an excuse for all reasons.
An excuse for all reasons.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, I mean, you mentioned obviously a new president would help, but I mean, is there anything that could be done in the meanwhile? I mean, we're still a couple years away from that.
That's right, and the administration has begun approving some things. For instance, a number of companies have applications in to create liquefied natural gas terminals so that they can export liquefied natural gas. The administration has been slow to approve some of those, but it has approved some. So there is some movement. It's just not very fast. And of course, last week the president approved certain drilling off in Alaska that Shell has been trying to do for years and years, and finally got it's a preliminary approval. Some other things have to be done, but at least it's moving progress some. So, but I'm not sure that we're going to get much accomplished until we get a different president there that is more energy amenable and feels like energy ought to be our future, as I do, rather than something that ought to be our past.
Well, we need someone from Wyoming. I think that would be or even South Dakota or North Dakota. I know quite a few people up in that neck of the woods certainly understand the energy industry as well. It's one of those things. I mean, it seems to be a waiting game. I know it's frustrating, but we can keep our fingers crossed and see what happens. Now, once we have a president that is amenable to this kind of infrastructure growth, and again, this isn't public money. This is all private money that's being spent on this. I mean, how long will it take to get this thing online and start moving that oil?
Oh, it would take a few years. The pipelines take the longest because you've got to get the right of ways and you've got to dig the ground and put it in there. So it takes a little while, and so I suspect for a while we're going to be looking at trains carrying most of this. And the interesting thing is the Energy Information Administration just came out a few days ago pointing out that we've now become the largest producer of oil. We've been the largest producer of natural gas. Now we're the largest producer of oil. We've been doing that, Don, mostly on private lands because the president has been very reluctant to allow new drilling on public lands and offshore. If you get an amenable president, a president who's willing to make energy part of our major economy, then you would, I think you'd see expansions on public lands as well, and we would not only become a net energy exporter, and that is important because so many of the countries that produce energy out there, oil and natural gas, are not our friends and not the friends of our allies, and they use energy as a sort of a political leverage and weapon to try to make other countries go along with them.
Well, and I think that would also get rid of some of the volatility in the oil prices as well. I mean, I don't know. You're in Texas, right?
Yes.
I don't know how it's been for you, but in the last 3 weeks, we've seen 40-cent increase in gas prices and maybe 30 or 40 cents in diesel. So it seems like some of that volatility, if we had more of a say in the supply of oil, some of that volatility would be taken away.
You know, when the Saudis decided to start increasing oil production at the end of last year, and that really started dropping the price, it created some volatility in there. What I found interesting about that is that's the first real volatility we've seen in the past several years, and what was interesting about that is in past years when the Middle East sneezed, everybody else saw their oil and gas prices skyrocket because people were afraid there was going to be some kind of problem in the Middle East. We've got real turmoil in the Middle East right now, and the reason for the volatility is not because of that turmoil, but because of Saudi oil production ramping up its production in order to be able to put more out there. So we want stable. You want stable supplies and stable prices. And the best way to do that is to have a global market where you've got a lot of people, a lot of countries being able to produce, and we're the ones that can actually take over the energy industry now if we have a president who's willing to do that.
Well, and of course, countries that you can trust being the price leaders would be a good start too. I mean, Saudi Arabia, and I don't know how much trustworthy they are.
Yeah, that's right. They're an ally, but they keep their own interest. They go by their own interest and not necessarily. Whereas Canada is our closest ally, our biggest trading partner, and the one that we ought to be working with, and yet we're stopping Canadian oil from coming down.
Yeah, it really is. It is a bit of a head scratcher, I will say. We're almost out of time, but I just want to kind of recap, maybe just a short 1 or 2 minute recap. What do you think the answer is to this infrastructure problem?
I think the answer is that you're going to have. We could take a step right now. The Republican-controlled Congress could move forward and with legislation to try to sort of push the issue and make sure that infrastructure can go forward, not by spending taxpayer money, but by saying by setting rules so that it's easier for companies to be able to get started in this. So I think that would be a key step the Republican Congress could take right now. And number two, I'd like to see the presidential candidates begin to talk about this as a major campaign issue, forcing the Democratic candidate to take a stand on it, because that may very well sort of determine where the election goes just there.
Well, I will say it'll be interesting to see if any of the Democratic candidates take this as their issue. I think there's a huge opportunity for maybe O'Malley or maybe Lincoln Chafee or one of the other candidates who hasn't announced yet. Elizabeth Warren probably won't, and Hillary probably wouldn't take this as an issue. But I think there is an opportunity for one of the Democrats in that side of the race to use this as an issue, and it would go a long way with those those old Reagan Democrats if there's still any left.
I agree with you, and I'm not sure they're going to do it. Jim Webb, the former senator from Virginia, is more on the conservative side, a former Marine, and it might be something he would pick up if he finally jumps in. He sort of implied that he's going to, but we'll see. He would be the one that might do it. Well,
yeah, it would definitely. I think it could definitely help that side of the race. I know some of those energy states that are kind of red, kind of blue, purple states. West Virginia is a perfect example of an energy state that flops back and forth between red and blue. So, Dr. Matthews, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we get a chance to talk again soon. This has been a very enlightening discussion, and I'm glad you could join us today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And on that note, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. News Talk 1270, KIML.
That's a solar panel for a talk radio machine. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. 70 KIML. 70 KIML. 70 KIML. 70 KIML. 70